The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Nathan Triplett from SWK Technologies. I am our sales director for HCM. Join with me today, I have Greg Peterman from Insperity. Greg is the National Business Development Manager for Insperity, who is the developer of Sage Time and Attendance. Thank you so much for attending. Today, we're going to walk you through some newer recent trends in time and attendance. And really to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to start to give you a little bit of a history lesson and go through a couple of the evolutions of time and attendance as we see it. We're on about our fourth evolution of capturing employee time. Then we're going to go through a little discussion of just some benefits of a modern approach to managing employee time. Time and attendance touches every employee. So just understanding where you may be able to gain some operational efficiencies within your process. We hope you'll find some value in that discussion. And then understanding how time and attendance fits into your overall HR management strategy, we feel is an important piece to share. And then just to give you some idea of what this could look like within your organization, how employees and managers and administrators could be using a time system. We're going to give you just a quick presentation of some features and functions that we're talking about today to hopefully bring some of the ideas and concepts that we're going to be sharing to life. We will have a question and answer session at the end. But if you do have questions during the course of the meeting, everyone is muted at this time. Please feel free to put them in the chat box. I will call them out to Greg as appropriate during the course of our presentation. We want this to be as interactive as possible, so look forward to any questions, comments, or feedback from the group. So with that, I'm going to pass things over to Greg and have him get us started with a little bit of history of Sage, or of time and attendance. So Greg?
All right, thanks, Nathan. Hello, everybody. I appreciate you joining us today. So the reason why we wanted to go through a little bit of the history of timekeeping is just to help you understand that timekeeping is, well, it's no longer timekeeping. As Nathan said, it really does assist with your HR management. Time and attendance solutions can be strategic to your business, as in helping you save money, helping you retain employees, the inverse, reducing turnover, for example. So there's a lot of things that the new time and attendance industry compared to years ago that are available. So if we start here, the history of timekeeping, right? Manual time clocks. And we've all seen this. Well, maybe not we all, but some of us who are old enough have seen this Flintstones thing, and that's kind of where we were. Mechanical clock. It stamped the time. That was great, but then the payroll person had to gather up all those time cards, go through with a pencil and eraser and check everything off and do all the math. And they think they're ready to go, so they pass it through a payroll. But again, it's kind of crossing your fingers because there's very few checks and balances. Then hide, because your employees may come around saying they're being paid incorrectly. And right about at this point is where I started in this industry. That doesn't mean I'm a dinosaur, but you can infer that, I suppose. So what happened next was back in the DOS days. You may recognize the device there. That is a Verifone credit card machine. So from back in the day, they were all modem based. We were able to take these and repurpose them to be a time clock. They were not robust at all. They constantly needed new programming. There weren't any proprietary electronic clocks that would integrate with a DOS-based solution back at this point. So we had to find creative ways. And the credit card machines is what we did. Unfortunately, at this point, we still had the payroll person or department sitting there doing everything. Payroll was responsible to run any reports that any executives needed, for example. They'd hand out the reports to supervisors to, find out why there was a missing punch. Everything would be handed back to the payroll department. Payroll department would have to key everything in. Not the most efficient, better than a mechanical time clock, though. So when the third generation came about, this is around the 2000 now, we started having proprietary time clocks designed specifically to work with an automated time and attendance solution. At that point, the other thing that started to happen is we started shifting some of that burden over to managers. So the payroll department was responsible to make sure people were paid, but the managers were responsible to make sure the employee's time was correct. So that shift really did change a lot. A lot of companies were fearful that, they couldn't trust their managers to do it right. But over time, change management, training, and all of that, managers started really getting involved in it. And that freed the payroll group up to do other things related to their jobs besides just chasing after a missed punch from an employee. So, now you're able to do data mining in here. As an administrator, you were able to run various reports, able to look at some trends and whatnot. It was, way better than it had been. Once again, though, at the end of the day, it fell on the payroll department to make sure everything was correct because the buck stops with you. So we're now in what we consider to be the fourth generation of time and attendance. And this is, again, industry-wide. This is not Insperity's product. So where you have more of a virtual manager, it sits in the system monitoring for issues. It's going to look for issues with employees' punches. Did an employee come in too late? Is an employee missing a punch? Is an employee absent? So with that workflow and the management, it allows you to manage by exception. Rather than going in and trying to find what's going on, the system's able to alert you to an issue. It allows you to, if you don't get an alert via email, there's nothing for you to do that day as far as fixing things. So it really streamlined that whole process and eliminated the need for your managers to have to log into the system and go through time card by time card looking for problems or running reports. It was right there in the dashboard. It also allowed for more of a self-service module, if you will, or can't think of the word I'm looking for, but employee self-service became available at this point as well. So there was a lot of hesitancy in the industry out there for people to have their employees able to view their time cards, to be able to view their own information. And that, of course, has changed as, especially with the millennial generation, but as a whole with the technology, you kind of can't get away from it no matter who you are and what you do. So computers are much more prevalent. People know how to use them. So a lot of companies end up putting a tablet or a laptop in the break room where employees can go in and look at their time. They can go and make sure it's correct. They can approve their time at the end of a pay period. They can view their balances. So all kinds of information that the employees have never had available to them in real time. So again, if you go back to the prior generations of the time and attendance, the employee would get a check and a copy of their time card. But I mean, that's looking in the rearview mirror now, what happened last week. With employee self-service now and it being real time, the employee can proactively address issues. They see that they have a missing punch. They can go to their manager and tell them, hey, I forgot to clock back in from lunch yesterday. So it really does get the employee involved in the business, involved in their time and getting themselves paid. And that empowerment does go a long ways towards employee satisfaction. It's so transparent that they know that a manager is not going in and making changes because there's an audit trail. It shows if changes are being made, it shows what was changed and why. So with this new generation of time and attendance, it really has come to full circle. In some ways, you go back to the mechanical clock with the time cards that it just stamps the time. That's pretty transparent from the employee to see, but that all went away until more recently with this fourth generation of time and attendance. The manager self-service, I touched on that a little bit, but again, it really is designed that the manager can log in and it shows them what they have to do, and they get in, they fix it, they get out, and they go on with their day because they all have jobs to do. So some of the benefits, automation gaps in the current processes. Those are, I think, somewhat obvious, but some of the nuances in there are going to be your attendance tracking. So example around that are some people are still using those red attendance calendar books where you write in that somebody was tardy or absent or whatnot. You have to tally all of that up. Well, the system can do all that for you. So it can track that information by employee allow your managers to see it, allow them to run month to date, quarter, year to date exception reporting to see what's going on. The same thing with overtime, for example. So through the virtual manager dashboard, if an employee is about to go into overtime, we can notify that manager so that they're aware it's going to happen, as opposed to finding out on Monday that it did happen on Friday. So, and then integrating the time and attendance in with your HR and payroll and accounting, really ties a bow around it. We're able to integrate with those systems so there's no data entry. Employee data can flow from your HR or payroll system into time and attendance. Payroll can flow out of there to hit, or total hours can flow out of there to hit payroll, which in turn hits your GL. It really eliminates a lot of manual entry, which also eliminates a lot of errors. Because let's face it, when you're keying data, it's easy to make a mistake. Employee and manager satisfaction is the other piece. And one of the things that is starting to become more prevalent out there is companies utilizing what's called a points or an occurrence system. And that's where they can assign a value to an infraction for all employees. So if an employee is tardy, they get a quarter point. If an employee is absent, they get a full point. Or you could set it up that after, in a rolling quarter, if they have 6 points total, they get a verbal warning. 7 points is a written warning, and so on, leading up to potentially termination. What that allows for is not only the employees are able to see that and go, oh, and kind of proactively, hopefully fix themselves, but your managers now have this measuring stick that they are utilizing for all employees. So regardless of how the manager feels about the employees, they're all being treated the exact same way. The manager can see that there was that tardy or absent, how many points they have, and it eliminates any kind of favoritism. The other thing you can do with that is you can do perfect attendance tracking. So a lot of companies are doing things like, if you have perfect attendance for a month, you get the, employee parking spot out front, or a Starbucks gift card, or a couple hours of PTO that's added to your bank. So it really is an incentive for employees to try to be there on time, which, let's face it, that's kind of what we're supposed to do. But it does incent them for that. Finally, the other piece that happens is you can get a little bit of a feel for how the managers are doing. When you have a manager with 10 employees who has 10 infractions in a week, and you have another manager with 10 employees whose employees have 25 infractions in a week, what's going on? Is there a problem with that manager and morale? Is it something within the department that's causing it? It allows you as sitting on high to look at things and evaluate, does this manager perhaps need a little more training? The employees really disgruntled. Are we in jeopardy of losing some of our star employees? So, some of those things can really help time and attendance be strategic to your business. Ultimately, if it reduces turnover, well, that can happen, believe it or not. And as everyone knows, turnover is a huge cost. So moving on here, we look at the real story. Payroll does represent your greatest resource and your greatest expense. A lot of people lose sight of the fact that the employees are your biggest and best resource. We can look at enterprise resource planning. That focuses around production, job costing and whatnot, and that's great. But you got to make sure the employees are being paid and treated well, that they are satisfied with the job, and that's where a lot of organizations do miss the boat. So it is one of the few functions that impacts every single employee. So when you do a change like this, it, number one, is something that you need to communicate over and over with the employees that this change is coming and why, but it's a great opportunity to make changes to some of your policies. As we all know, policies get set, and 15 years later, we have the same policies. Well, you want to make a tweak to your accrual policies, now would be the time to do it, to make some changes there. So With it impacting every employee, we might as well go ahead and change some rules as needed too. It's something to think about. So we want to be able to maximize the resources and minimize your efforts, and that's where this whole integrated solution really does make a difference for you. So Nathan, I'm going to turn this back over to you to talk about this data flow diagram quickly, and then we'll continue on.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Great history lesson. I know I remember the ka-chunk punches, as I affectionately call them, as we saw in the original Flintstone slide. So, a good reminder, and happy to be where we are, and really good to learn about managing time by exception. I think that's a lot of what we're driving here, is we have the ability with the tools in the system, with the integrations and the interfaces between different systems, all using the same data that we need to manage your employees and manage them effectively, to build in, to accommodate your business rules. And so what you're having to do with these time systems, and they've gotten very elegant and very user-friendly, but as much time as we can have your employees, your managers, and your administrators focusing on other things and allowing the system to manage by exception, the more successful we see our implementations and our customers be. So before we give you a view of how some of these things can function, I think it's good to orient ourselves with just how the data flows within the system. I know it's helpful for me. Something not to spend a lot of time on, but I wanted to give you all a complete picture of what's available within time. If you look at the upper left-hand corner, many time systems offer an advanced scheduling component, where if there's workforces that have demand-based schedules, we're scheduling into a capacity, we're scheduling to a particular budget. We have folks that have other responsibilities, from childcare to other jobs to schooling. We're able to allow our managers to have good visibility into who's available, who's not available, who can work different positions, not go into overtime, and bring that into the time system. So as Greg mentioned with the punches, we understand very clearly how a punch aligns with when an employee is supposed to be there, so we can do anything that may be needed from there. If you look towards the middle and the bottom of your screen, the goal is to get the information in time systems as effectively as possible, right? We have the old school mechanical time clocks, the modem-based time clocks. Now we have a number of different options that are tailored based on the workforce that you have. We recognize that not all employers are the same. Sometimes we need a biometric clock. Sometimes a web punch is just fine. Sometimes if there's a lack of internet access, telephony, or maybe even a mobile punch may be best. And so what we see with modern systems is the ability to mix and match how employees are going to be interacting with the system for the group that makes the most sense. So for instance, if you have, again, a group on the workforce or on the shop floor, having a biometric clock with a nice cover to protect from corrosive items, to make sure people can get in and out quickly and back to their jobs may be the best approach. Where if it's an office worker that's salary-based, just logging into the system and entering in their PTO time so it populates nicely in their time card may be a better approach for them. Again, only requiring people to do what they need to do for the things that you care about managing. From the time system, we have two really interfaces that we see. And again, this is variant based on the size and complexity of organizations with the amount of turnover. But I always tell my customers that you're going to be the most efficient if you have the three things on the right: HR, payroll, and time, all connected closely together. So HR data, what I'm talking about is employee information, demographic information, job and pay rate, employee manager, supervisor relationships, because time systems need all that information, right? We need to know who the manager is to approve the employee's time, to approve time off requests. If we're doing any kind of budgeting from time systems, or looking at costs, bringing in salary hours with our wage information with the appropriate level of security can be helpful. And then obviously after we go through our payroll process or our time process, pushing that data over to payroll, so we're not keying in hours. So we're bringing over everything from our calculated hours, benefit hours, expenses, PTO time, travel, whatever it may be. So when we push a file into payroll for payroll administrators, the only things that you should ever need to do within that payroll transaction file, if you're working on a true exception-based time system, are the actual exceptions, right? If it's somebody was sick and for some reason it didn't get caught within the system, right? It's the one-off that happens where managers and employees aren't approving that. So Our goal is to streamline the payroll process. With a true exception-based system, we typically see that cut at least in half, if not more. So want to turn things back over to Greg just to kind of give you a little bit more of a workflow from a day in the life of an employee, the manager, to bring that a little bit more life to you folks.
All right, thanks, Nathan. Before I jump into the demo, I just wanted to check if there's been any questions in the chat box yet. If there's anything we should address now versus later.
Right, I think we're good for now, Greg, so let's go ahead and keep rolling, okay?
Okay, sounds good. So let me know if you are able to see my screen here. Give it just a second. All right, just give me a, okay, 1 second here. Okay, are you seeing my screen at all right now, Nathan?
See the PowerPoint.
Okay, give me 1 second. I have it sharing just the one screen, and I wanted to show my desktop, and that's what I thought I had done. There we go. I think we'll be okay now. Okay, now are you seeing it?
Yes, we see your web browser.
All right, look at that. Yeah, Greg. Okay, so what we wanted to do is take you through a little bit of a day in the life of an employee, a day in the life of kind of what a supervisor might do, and then a day in the life of the administrator. So we're going to go ahead and log in as our friend Dave here. And Dave has a couple choices. He can log into the system, or maybe he's an office employee, salary non-exempt, so you want him to be punching in and out on a computer. Dave can do that as well. So you can see here, if he was punching from a PC, you can do the various transactions in per day, lunch. They can do transfers to other departments or jobs. You can do in and out for breaks if that's something you really wanted to do. So we can customize this to only collect the type of transactions you want. It might just be in per day and out per day, and you're auto deducting a lunch for Dave since he is salary non-exempt. So that's one of the options there. The other is to go ahead and log into the system. Now, when Dave logs into the system, it's going to present him with whatever information you want him to see. So you can set up different profiles for your employees when they log into the system. So Dave's able to view his alerts, for example. So Dave can see he has a missing punch here. That's a big deal. And this would be the default when they log in, is to show these alerts. Might also show them that he took too long of a lunch or he was tardy, and just, again, notifying the employee that we are aware that these things are happening. And it's kind of helps the employees do a little bit better job too when they know just how visible those exceptions are. Now, they can go in and view their total hours week to date, or if you're biweekly, they can slice and dice that data however they want to. So check for overtime, just do a summary of how many hours I have. At the end of the pay period, one of the huge things we can do, and I'm going to get into some of the other functionality, but as long as I'm here, you could have your employees approve their time cards at the end of the pay period. This is very, very popular, and here at Insperity, we have almost 3,000 employees. Everyone fills out a timesheet, whether salaried or hourly, and everyone approves their time at the end of the pay period. So, I'm getting my straight 80 for being salaried, but if I have a PTO day or anything else that's in there, I need to approve the time, and then my manager approves my time. That way, payroll knows when they're ready to run, when it's okay to run payroll. And I'll show you what that looks like a little bit later when we log in as an administrator. So you can see here, if I were to hit approved, it would go ahead and flag it. And at that point, the employee can't make any changes. It's now locked down for the employee. The supervisor can still log in and make changes as necessary. So if we go down to the accrual summary, for example, so again, give your employees the ability to view their balances. They can see accrued time, carryover, taken, pending, and whatnot. So again, this is great insight. A lot of times, employees don't know what their balances are without requesting it. or maybe it's on their paycheck. It just gives, again, that little bit of transparency for the employees. This is highly customizable. Everyone seems to have different accrual policies, and of course it can scale. 1 to 5 years is this way, 5 to 10 years is, you accrue twice as much. So that's all available in the system. They can also go through and, whoops, did not mean to click that. They can also go through and request time off in the system if that's something you want them to have the ability to do. So what I'm going to do before all right, let's do that right now. So from a request standpoint, Dave already has a couple in here. He's really, on point. He has some time off for 2020 already in here. But he has the ability to go ahead and request a day off. So he can put in that time. He can put in a number of hours. He could put in a reason for it, whatever that may be. Going camping in winter. I'm in Minnesota right now, so that makes sense to some people. As soon as they submit the request now, Teresa, who is Dave's boss, Dave's manager, can get an email saying that Dave has requested time off. Teresa can approve that right within the email, and the full audit trail is in there showing that Dave requested it, when he requested it, Terry approved it. Nothing else Terry needs to do for that day off. Dave now can see that it's been approved when he logs in the next time, and we're good to go. Teresa, though, in the meantime, the manager has the ability to look at who else is off. So she'll have access to a time off calendar, which I'm not going to go into because as an employee, it's not real relevant. But she'll have access to that to see if anyone else already has time requested for them, so she can make sure that the staffing is adequate. One other thing is I wanted to get back to the alerts here. So in the alerting, Dave has that missing punch. We might want to look into what that is. So I can go ahead and click on it, and it's going to give me some additional details here. And if I scroll down, this is my time card. I can see the missing punches here. So if we look at it, it looks like we came in for the day at 7:06 a.m., out at 12:54, came back at 1:54, and now we're missing the out punch. So Dave comes in the next day, he sees that, he can request what time that was supposed to be for his manager. So he didn't have to go and find Teresa. He can just say, okay, my punch happened at whatever time it was, 5 in the evening, and hit that and put in a reason or a comment. Sorry, boss. And now submit it. Teresa, again, is going to get that email. She might want to log in and take a look at it and see if that makes sense, but ultimately she can just approve that. She doesn't have to go and chase Dave down and find out what that missing punch was. Okay, so Nathan, anything else from an employee standpoint you want me to touch on?
No, I don't, and maybe this is better to address at the end, but we do have a question. So I'll go ahead and read it out, and maybe we can address it as part of the conversation and some at the end. So
sure.
Dale, I'll let you know. Let me know if we answer this effectively for you. But he said, well, we're still on the Flintstone slide and are thinking about making a change. What do you find is the most difficult part of transitioning to the newer generation of time system?
That's a really good question. And I touched on it briefly, but, the catch-all phrase would be change management. First of all, if you are going to change, the place to start is to start with your policies. So let's see if, there are any adjustments that need to be made. Are you completely compliant with the latest Department of Labor regulations? Again, this is the time to put those things in place. So a lot of companies do, their own internal audit of what their policies are to make sure that they're fully in compliance. The next part, though, is then notifying everybody. And I mean, that's the employees that, once you make a selection for a system, of course, letting them know that a new system's coming in place, and let them know the reasons. because it can very quickly be taken as big brother, or it can be more sold to the employees as a great benefit to reduce payroll errors, giving them access to just request time off online. So depending on how you message that can really help with the acceptance of the system. And that even goes for the managers. Nathan, I know you've heard this many times, where we're talking about managers having access to go in and make these changes. And we hear, well, our managers, they can't do that. We can barely get them to do their jobs. Well, okay, that's a different issue, but managers can do that. You want to think about getting them integrated with this, getting them on board with it. So again, change management, plan ahead of what you're going to do. And that's probably the biggest thing between tweaking your policies and making sure everyone is aware of what's going on and allowing the time for it. And that's a critical piece. You'll hear out there some time and attendance systems, we can have you up and running in 2 weeks. Well, we could, but you can't. There's no way you could. There's too many changes and you have your own jobs to do. So realistically, you're talking 2 to 3 months, sometimes even more, to get the system fully up and running, because you want to do parallel testing. You want to ease into it. You don't just flip the switch overnight. So setting adequate time, adequate expectations, that lead time is a big part of it as well. So I don't know if that answered the question. I hope so.
Yeah, Dale, feel free to chime in if you want more clarification. A couple of things from my perspective. I think Greg hit the nail on the head when he talked about change management. What I've seen is not having a power user at your site or someone who owns the system on your side of the fence. A lot of the customers that I see struggle are folks that don't necessarily take the full ownership, not necessarily across the entire organization. We don't need your employees or end employees to be power users, but we do need someone to be a trainer or someone as a go-to internally. We find change management is a little bit better adopted there. And then just some sort of strategy for managing adoption, right? And to making sure people are using the system well. I'll give you an example. I've actually used this system in the past. In the first week I used it, we did after the fact entry, and I put all of my time on the wrong rows. And so when I sent my time over, our payroll administrator noted that I had 42 audits on one time card. And she reached out to me very kindly in an email and said, are you okay? Do you need more training on the system? Did you hit your head on the keyboard? And when you're entering in your time. But the point being is thinking about ways we can ensure people are using the system effectively and getting in front of issues before things spiral or before people maybe have a negative feeling about the overall system. And this is across the board, right? Just maintaining that momentum, maintaining that positive feeling internally about the project, about the ability to be successful in the project. A lot of times is just as important as the technology that we're using. So Dale, I hope that helps. Please chime in if there's anything else that we can clarify for you. But Greg, let's keep rolling from there.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nathan. All right, so while Nathan was talking about that, I went ahead and logged in as Teresa. So Terry is the manager, and she manages Dave along with the several other people. So she's immediately presented with this action list, okay? She can see, again, these exceptions. Lunch too long, approaching premium. That's our way of saying he's about to go into overtime. So Terry could drill into that and figure out why he's about to have overtime and make an informed decision whether she's going to make him go home early or not. Of course, that missing punch that Dave had, that's going to show along with absenteeism and whatnot. So it gives the manager real good insight into what's happening with their own employees. If you were to go with an occurrence system or a point system, as I talked about during the PowerPoint, the managers could also go in and see where they're getting any dings with points. So tardy, for example, and this employee got a 1/4 point. Well, it was a horrible snowfall, which again, it's snowing in Minnesota right now, so might as well use that. So really bad snowfall that day. So yeah, it was late. Well, at least he came in. So you're probably not going to ding them for that. That's something that, is more of a soft policy that HR would work with the managers on, but they'd have that kind of insight here. They'd also be able to see then if an employee is approaching that threshold of needing a verbal warning or not. So even before that occurs, the manager can be prepared and possibly do a little bit of coaching. So, and as we said, that all of these exceptions, any alerts in the system can be emailed. So Terry doesn't have to log in. She could just get the email if there's nothing in there that is a call to action. There's nothing to do with lunch too long, for example. There's nothing to do if somebody came in early, fine, as long as she knew that she called them in early. So it's really nothing to do except for that missing punch, which of course Dave went in and requested that. So Terry had already gotten the email, could have approved it. So we're really trying to keep the managers from having to go into the system. And if they do go into the system, stop them from having to hunt and do data mining. We don't want them to have to do that. So we present them with what's most relevant. We work with you during the implementation to determine what it is you want your managers to see and what it is you want them to do. So a lot of functionality in here can be locked down at the field level even. So, you can really set it up that the manager only has to do a few things. So again, talking what Nathan was talking about, make it as easy as we can for those managers to get in and get out and, go on with what they're supposed to be doing the rest of the day. So the next piece under take action is time off requests. So if you remember, we put in a time off request for Dave. Maybe I got the email if you want it set up that way. Otherwise, as Terry, I can see what he's requesting here. I can respond to it by approving or declining it. I could drill into the details. By the way, I forgot to say that we can make sure that the employee is not requesting to the point where they go negative. So we could stop that kind of request, or we can flag that. So in some cases, companies might allow somebody to go negative if it's only a couple hours because they accrue per pay periods. So again, we'll set up those policies based on what your policies are. So as we've gone through here, let's say we fixed up the missing punches, everything's looking good there. We might want to take a snapshot of a few things. We can look at the attendance calendar, for example, which my data is not the best. Let me see if we've got February loaded in here. No, we don't. But this would show for all of Terry's employees any exceptions, and more of a, little more visually in this case. It really helps understand what's happening. You start seeing trends when you're able to look at it in a calendar format. You may find that in Nathan's case, every Monday, he's coming in late during the football season because he's staying up late watching Sunday night football. You can spot those kinds of trends with this kind of system. So they can look at, I might want to go in and just look at the hours by each of the employees. I can look at my own, or I can look at all of my employees' time. So I could just do a quick spot check and see how it looks. Again, various ways of sorting that data. This detailed view is great. You can drill in further if needed. On top of that, it allows your managers, again, to recognize what's happening, that this person's salaried but worked 98 hours in a biweekly period. Might want to talk to them. You don't necessarily want your employees burning out. So again, we're just really trying to help your managers make informed decisions and help them identify areas where they can coach their employees. So the next piece is, I'm just going to jump into, actually, let me back up for a second. We do have reports in the system, of course. There are, 100 and some odd reports available. All of those can be sorted and sliced and diced in a lot of different ways. So it's hard to say exactly how many reports we have because of that flexibility with the sorting and whatnot. We can set the reports up to be automated. So each morning I have an email that has a report for attendance and total hours from the prior day. So I can just look at that. Great, now I'm informed on what's going on. So
And
you also can give them
real quick there, Greg, just Dale, to
Yeah.
your question earlier. One of the things that we find pretty consistently is if you expect managers to log into the system, and this is any system, right? We're talking about time and attendance, but if we expect them to log in the system and proactively seek out exception-based information and act upon it, it's not the most likely thing to happen. But as Greg mentioned, and this is any system working on that exception basis, if you can get information delivered to you, whether it's alert or report, or delivered to your managers in their inbox every morning, so he or she will come into work and look at that first, significantly more likely to take action on that information than if they would have to log into a system and proactively run a report to get to that same data set. So just ways, again, I know we're talking about time, but I think it's a pretty universal concept with HR and ERP systems that, you know, the more we can do by exception and have the system raise the hand for us, the more successful I've seen our customers be.
Well said. I think I saw another question pop up, Nathan. So if it's better for now versus later, let me know. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and continue. So I just jumped into the approval section. So again, if we're going to involve the employees and you choose to have the employees approve their time cards at the end of each pay period, then you're going to have a set time that needs to be done. So pay period ends on the Sunday, you're biweekly, so every other Monday by noon, the employees need to approve their time. So in the ideal world now, Terry would come into the system and quick launch this screen, which is the approval screen, and she'd see all the employees, you know, checked as approved. Might find that one, that Larry, for example, maybe hasn't approved his time yet. Well, he's off today. So the manager can force that approval if that's needed and that's the way you want to operate. Here at Insperity, again, you have to approve your own time card. And, you know, with technology where it is, I can approve my time on my phone easy enough. So as Nathan was talking about, you do have the ability to get at the data in various ways. You control that though. So you don't have to give access via a cell phone. So the other part of this though is just to make sure that our time card looks right. So our total hours, I guess, you know, I said biweekly, but so this group is weekly. But I can see this. I can see that I'm going to be approving potentially almost an hour of overtime. So, you know, I want to be looking at that 6.7 hours for Jerry. I might want to stop and look into why that happened. Again, you want to make sure you're informed. I may be asked, so I probably want to figure out why he had that time. But if I'm comfortable with everything and all my employees have approved their time, I can go ahead and tell it to approve all and save it. Now at this point, the administrative group, which might be yourselves, you would be able to see real quickly if anyone has not approved their time cards, any supervisors. Now you see what just happened here, and I'll touch on that in just a second, but what you're looking for is all the approvals to have been done, and that's what tells you that you're ready to go on with your piece. So what this did just now, though, is it said, wait a minute, you can't approve Dave's time because he still has a missing punch. Therefore, this is not correct. So it's not going to let you, you know, miss something critical like a missed punch, which is going to affect their time. So there are checks and balances in the system. I would go and find Dave, find out what that missing punch was and fix it. That's assuming we didn't use that missing punch request. In the ideal world, this would have been fixed already. And of course, the audit trail's there. So it's going to show any changes that are made ever and by who. So it's hard to get around that part. So I'm going to go ahead and back out of here, but that's how you would do the approvals. Anything else?
And Greg, let me, I have a question from Michelle. And so her question, does the system calculate current PTO balances excluding pending PTO time that has been approved but not yet taken? Good question.
Ask that again. I'm not sure if I followed it.
It's the future PTO balances. And so if I have, I think and Michelle, make sure we're on the right path. And so if I'm an employee and I've requested time into a future pay period, is it going to appropriately decrement my bucket to reflect that future request, but also show the running balance, right? That doesn't necessarily reflect the time's been taken already.
Yes. So it can project the balances and project the pending taken. And again, that's all around the policies that you want. We configure it based on what your policies are. So yes, it can absolutely do that.
Thanks, Greg. So Michelle, if that answers your question, fantastic. If you need more clarification, let us know. Thanks, Greg.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and just real quick show you the administrative view. And if you've all noticed, when I logged in as an employee, logged in as a manager, now logging in as say, the payroll administrator, it's the same program, same product, it's same look and feel. So it really adds a level of consistency so that, your administrative user is just adding on more functionality over what the supervisor has. The supervisor has a little more functionality than what the employee has, but it really is a uniform, training across the board. That consistency, it makes a big difference. So Kevin's a manager. He has a couple of employees that reports to him. So he might need to go through and check out those alerts and requests. And of course, he needs to approve his own employees' time. But assuming that all of that's been taken care of, the only thing that Kevin really needs to do is go ahead and process the payroll. I want to make sure all the approvals are done. If that's done, then it's really just a matter of telling it to export. Now, in the case of if it's Sage HRMS payroll or Sage 100, Sage 300, whatever you're using for payroll, Bob's payroll system, we currently interface with a lot of different systems. But we're going to export this data in a format compatible with whichever Sage products you have. So there's no data entry again. Now, you may have multiple pay periods, so you can choose which ones you want to do, your hourly group or your salaried group. You don't have to do it all at once. You can do it in batches. So this kind of gives you a lot of checks and balances, again, when you tie it into the audit trail, the approvals, the transparency by the employees. We get to this point and we process this and start running payroll, and an employee comes back and says their time's wrong. You can kind of start pointing back at the employee saying, well, maybe it's you that missed something. It doesn't mean you don't have to fix it, but at least it takes some of that responsibility off of your shoulders and shifts it to the supervisors and managers and employees. So
hey Greg, quick question here.
Yeah,
we have a timely question from Ken. Ken said, if we have full-time employees that are set up in our Sage 100 payroll modules and other temps that we notify the temp agency, how is time and attendance configured to know Sage 100 payroll employees versus outside temp agencies? And how do we link that into Sage 100 payroll? And so I think this screen here, right, exporting by pay group, is going to give you what we're looking for. So Greg, you just want to give a little bit more color here?
Yeah. So we can, as I just went, when I select the export, I can just do the entire company if that's what we wanted to do, but we don't. So we're going to have an hourly group, a salaried pay group. Who knows? You may have multiple pay groups, but in the case of, let's say, they're temps, you might have a department listed for temps, and you're going to select all except for the temp department. And that's when you export it. It's not going to export those temps. That said, you might then want to come back through and export only the temps and send that file off to the payroll, or out to the temp agency so they can pay the employees. So you absolutely have that kind of control. I think you can actually take it down to the individual employee even if you needed to for like a one-off paycheck.
And then Ken, the other side of your question, for Sage 100 payroll, to get the time in, what we're typically leveraging is a visual integrator job. So visual integrator is necessary on the Sage 100 side. This is really regardless of the time and attendance solution. unless we're using the time card or time track module within Sage 100. And so then we would just write a visual integrator job, which Visual Integrators is an integration tool for Sage 100, standard on the Sage price list, to bring that data in and map it to Sage 100 payroll, something that we've done for lots and lots of customers. So let me know if that makes sense, and or if you have any additional clarifications that would be helpful, Ken.
So kind of a quick wrap up here, Nathan, is, Nathan introduced this as Sage Time and Attendance by Insperity, and this is a white label solution for Sage. We were endorsed or are endorsed as an add-on product that Sage has blessed to integrate with the various products. We go to every Sage Summit each year that they have them. So I don't know if you all made it to the San Diego one. Otherwise, Atlanta's coming up in May. We will be there. So we have a very strong relationship between Sage and Insperity, and even more so, a very strong relationship between the Sage business partners, SWK and Nathan, and myself and Insperity. So those relationships are what this is all built on, and it's a very collaborative effort. Sage Time and Attendance is a great product. This is the exact same product as our standard retail version. However, because of you are a Sage customer, you get a automatic discount. So you're able to buy, we set up special pricing for Sage so that if there was ever any conflict of interest between our direct sales group and our business partners, that Sage would be able to offer the best pricing. So just wanted to throw that in as well. Anything you want to add to that, Nathan, before we finalize?
Yeah, I would say we're getting to the point of questions, folks. I appreciate the questions coming in. Everybody on the call has an opportunity to learn from each of you as we ask questions. So please funnel those in. But certainly, just in summary, appreciate the time and participation that we had from the group today. We've recorded this presentation. We'll be sending it out after. And I think more than anything, we want to be part of the discussion. It is a very strategic component within the HR space. It's one of the things that we can really show the true revenue impact that we can have on an organization, just in terms of saving money, reducing overtime, saving time in terms of administrative and payroll processing. So we can help really clearly you make decisions to see, is this something that would be of value to kind of move to the future with time and attendance management with an exception-based system or not. So we will send that communication out. I'm just going to glance at our questions again. I don't see anything that has popped up, so I'll just pause for about 10 or 15 more seconds and raise your hand if you have anything you want us to answer. But we'll be following up as well, so certainly not a speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, and while we're, giving it those few seconds here, Nathan, one other thing that is an endorsed solution as well that's offered by Insperity is an organizational management tool, which allows you to visualize your employee data in various ways. So I just pulled that up on the screen as well. I'm not going to get into this, but it's a very, very powerful tool. You can even utilize it to show points or occurrences within the system. You can see salaries for your employees, salary by department. There's a planning mode that allows you to do if-then type scenarios because maybe you're growing, or especially through mergers and acquisition. It's a great tool to help you with that, understanding what your talent is and how to fit the new people in. So if that's something anyone was interested in taking a look at, please contact Nathan and we can set up a time to go through that as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Greg. Well, I don't see any other questions from the group. So again, thank you so much for your time and participation. We'll be sending out recordings. Encourage any feedback or suggestions in terms of this webinar, other content that would be helpful to the future. And just really appreciate the opportunity to be of service to your business. So thank you again. Everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.